All right, welcome everyone. It's Malferon, and we have a really special guest today here, Lorcana Villain, and or as a lot of people will probably hear his name called out in the Disney Lorcana Challenge streams as Baker commonly. So you want to just say hi real fast, Baker?
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I specifically waited until after we started recording to double check. Is it Malferon? Is that the correct pronunciation
Yeah,
or not?
Malferon. You can just call me Justin. Either way. And so
Malferon, Justin. Okay, cool. Just to confirm. But yeah, no, a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, and so a lot of this interviews is just to kind of get to know you. I feel like so many people love to interview the players in the game, and they get opportunities to be showcased and get their moments to shine. And obviously, you guys are in the spotlight all the time as faces of the game. But outside of your YouTube, which is awesome, I really appreciate the Lorcana Villain YouTube. Just wanted to give you a chance to be the one to get schmoozed a little bit, to get highlighted a little bit for people to get to know the man, the myth, the legend. And so I guess I wanted to start out by saying, let's go back to the beginning a little bit. Like, tell us a little bit, like, where did you grow up? A little bit like little
Yeah,
Baker.
little Baker. Yeah. Yeah, again, thanks for having me. And yeah, I agree. I think most of the time it's the players that people wanna hear about and hear from. Obviously, content creators and casters and hosts are great for like running the interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, primarily people like to hear about the players. But no, thanks for inviting me to do a bit more of a personable chat. Hopefully there are people that will find it interesting. But yeah, little Baker. So I was born and started growing up in London
Okay.
from a place called Newham. My mum had me quite late in life. She was 40 when I was born. She'd never really been interested in children before then. She was a career woman. She'd done loads of different sort of things. Probably one of the cooler things being she managed bars and pubs. I need more coffee in the East End of London during the sort of 70s and 80s, which was quite a historically interesting time in the East End of London, like with the sort of characters and culture that was going around. And my mum was very close to what in the UK we call Hell's Angels. I don't know if they have the same name all around the world, but
Yeah.
basically motorbike gangs, which is very shocking. You wouldn't think of it to look at her now because she's 75. She's the most typical, just lovely old lady, wants to make you a cup of tea and bake you some good. Like she's the absolute stereotype, like lovely little old woman. You would not believe like some of her history. Like she's met some people. She was a bit of a badass, to be quite blunt with you.
Love it.
But yeah, ended up later in life deciding that she wanted a kid. I came along. She was never with my dad, and my dad was never in the picture, and that's not a point of sore. Like that's not a sore subject for me. You can't miss what you've never had, right? And my mum like was an incredible mum, so I don't see it as a sore subject. Like I grew up just with an only mum. I've got no brothers or sisters. And yeah, we moved when I was about 5 years old. I'm not going to say the exact place because I'm there again now. But to people in the UK, just for a little bit of reference, the biggest cities to me are Reading and Oxford. So I can narrow it down a little bit for
Yeah.
people that are from the UK. But I'm still only about an hour outside of London, even at this point. So yeah, we moved outside of London, and I grew up where I am now. And yeah, that was the kind of early stages, and I found I was quite early on. I realised I was a bit of a weird kid. I didn't make friends very easily when I started being put into social situations. I was normally off talking to myself and like just playing my own fantasy, like you do as a kid.
A
Like
special kid.
a jungle gym is a castle, right? Like you and your friends, you create storylines, you create memories. I would just do that on my own. So like with no one else to give context or understanding, like I probably looked a little weird as a kid, and then garnered this love for performing and love of the
Okay.
theatre, which again I know you want to talk a little bit about Disney, but that was very much one of the things that put me down the path of performing because like growing up with just a single mum. My mum made sure I had everything I needed, like food on my back, food on my belly, anything I needed for school, uniform, whatever it is. Like I had what I needed. And then when it came to like entertainment and recreational sort of things, I would get as much as she could afford because she's a single mum working part time. You couldn't have everything, right? But I have very distinct memories of. I was very close to my granddad growing up. He would come visit us maybe once a month and stay for a long weekend. Whenever he was down, me, him, and my mum would go to. And this is me from the age of like between the ages of like 5 and 9, 10. Okay. We would go to car boot sales. I don't know if they exist there. I suppose in America, the closest thing to a car boot sale would be like
what is that?
A car boot sale. So for Americans, the closest thing to it, I imagine, would be a yard sale. Right, where you put out
big
tables, all your old stuff, right? Toys, CDs, DVDs, ornaments, whatever it is you're trying to get rid of, like you're just trying to get shot. And a car boot sale, essentially the same thing, but instead of doing it in your yard, there would be designated areas of land that would be rented for a day or a weekend, and people would go. They'd take the car, put all the stuff in the boot of the car, go to this area of land, which was normally a huge muddy field, to be honest. And then you'd get tables out, or you'd sell right out the boot of your car, or both. And it would be quite big, and like it would be a big weekend. And we used to go to those all the time, and you'd find stuff cheap, right? So that's when the first sort of like recreational entertainment things I started getting really were videotapes, like secondhand videotapes from. And for you kids, that's the stage before DVDs. VHS, it was called.
That's right. They're the rectangle things with the black tape.
Yeah, exactly that. And I from those car boot sales started building a collection of videotapes of various themes, but 90% I would say was Disney films. That's where most of my Disney films came from, like secondhand as a kid. Don't get me wrong, like on birthdays and Christmas, like a real treat would be like the film that came out 6 months ago, and I'd get it brand new. Do you know what I mean? I was very grateful for that. Yeah. So that had that was a big part of my younger years, and just the concept of people bursting out into song to express an emotion or a message. I find quite entertaining. Yeah. And then I found out I remember I went to see. This wasn't until I was about 11. But I went to see The Phantom of the Opera for the first time. Very famous musical in the West End in London.
Show or like a movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
The musical. Okay. The equivalent to Broadway, essentially. Okay. And I went kicking and screaming because it didn't seem like the sort of thing that I was going to be interested in. Because again, pretty much, because I love the idea of Disney and bursting into songs and musicals, but then I was presented with this. Just a mask and a red flower as the poster, and I was like, this looks really boring. I don't think I'm going to like this. It's how long? Anyway, went to see it, and it absolutely blew my mind. Absolutely captivated me. I spent the entire time just jaw dropped looking up. I didn't know this was something you could actually do. Yeah. As a career, as something in your life. Again, I thought it was just these dancing and singing animals in Winnie the Pooh or Robin Hood or whatever it is that I'm watching at the time. I didn't realize it was something you could actually do with your life.
Yeah.
So I was just absolutely captivated by it, and that's what kind of put me on a path for a long time of chasing dreams of wanting to be a performer. And what that looked like precisely changed over the years. Quite consistently, it was a dream to be in the West End and be in shows like Phantom, Les Mis, Jekyll and Hyde, all this sort of stuff. But also I was like, I'd love to be in a film, or I'd love to do voiceover for an animation or a video game. And then as times changed and evolved, and mocap became a novel piece of how we create media these days, and I was like, I'd love to do things like that. I love physical theatre and all that stuff. So yeah, from a very early age I was captivated by storytelling and performing, and that kind of led from one stage to another while growing up, of putting me on the path that consumed the majority of my life, and still to this day I still consider myself a performer. Yeah. It's just a very specific type of thing that I'm doing now. But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what shaped early Baker, shall we say.
It's cool. So definitely early signs of just wanting to express, put on a show, entertain. Clearly you're charismatic, right? And so I remember when I was when I was young, class clown energy was strong in me, and so
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
really like kind of the theatrics and stuff in high school as well.
yeah.
But let's say so if so would you say that Phantom of the Opera was like your first kind of like formal sort of like high performance art that you like really like witnessed other than kind of movies?
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously, in primary school or elementary school, I think would be the
Oh,
equivalent in America. When you got to the final year of that before you would move to high school or
okay.
secondary school, as we call it here, it was tradition that you would do a school play. And at this age, you were like 11, 12.
All right.
And we did one called Bugsy Malone.
Bugsy Malone. Okay.
And there was already a film of it that existed, and we watched it in class, and I loved it. And I remember going home and like begging mum to like buy this film so that I could study it in my spare time and super prepare for the audition. So that
I
was
love that.
kind of the first. That was kind of the first example of applying myself
Hmm.
to what at that age felt like, oh, this is again, it was just a school play in a school gym, right? But to that aged mind, it was like, oh, this is going to be really professional. I'm going to take it really seriously, and like I'm going to show what I can do. But in terms of like viewing like a main stage piece of theatrics, then yeah, Phantom was the first thing that I saw outside of films and movies.
I mean, I think as a kid, taking something, being a professional, there's never too young to be that. Like
Of
even to
course,
this day, I'm
absolutely.
running like mid 30s folks. They're like, you could still maybe be a professional. Let's see. So, uh, single mother household, and clearly it sounds like your mom was very important to you. Could you maybe highlight a little bit more about your mother, what it was like to kind of grow up, sort of, it sounds like kind of like being like the man of the house while you're trying to absorb these aspirations of like a performer swelling up within you.
Yeah.
And if that's hard, maybe
So
it's a,
no, 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 no. It's like it's just trying to decide the best way to kind of approach answering
yeah.
that question. Um, the thing is, I remember so when I was 17, going on 18. And this was just before I moved out for the first time to go to college. So I was 17, about to turn 18. I was like young for my year. Um, and about 6 weeks before I was due to move to go to college, me and my mum were evicted from the house that I
Wow.
grew up in from the age of like 6 to 17. So like my real defining years and my teen years. And we were evicted from that house, and I had no idea that it was a shock to me. I literally found out it was either the day before or 2 days before was when my mum told me, hey, this is happening. Um, at the time, it wasn't it's definitely happening. But basically, she was like, I'm going to court in 2 days, and worst case scenario of that case is going to be that I come home and we have to be out the house by whatever time the judge decides we need to be out of the house by.
Yeah.
And this had been something that had been going on for like 2 to 3 years. My mum having some real struggle with debts and bills. Got a lot worse after my granddad died when I was 15. Because again, growing up, we didn't have much. My mum worked part time, but couldn't work full time as a single mum. So she did her best. I know my granddad was really supporting her as much as he could. But then he passed when I was 15, and within a couple of years, she was like, well, she was already struggling, and then after he passed, like it was just a slow accumulation of things getting worse and worse. And I didn't see it coming at all. And to be honest, like people might feel a different way about what I'm about to say, and I think that's valid. But for me, maybe not at the time, but looking back now, that was her protecting me and not making me aware, like letting me enjoy those years without
Yeah.
living in constant fear. And because I could never tell, I always had food in my belly. Like I said at the start, I always had everything I needed, and it wasn't out of the ordinary that I wasn't getting, oh, a new PlayStation game, a new whatever, new whatever. Like that's just not the upbringing I had. So me getting like just what I needed to get by, and then the occasional treat was very normalized. So I didn't realize how bad things had been getting going on in the background. And at the time, I remember feeling maybe a bit more negative about it, the fact that it was such an ambush. And maybe even a few years later, like I think there was still some bitterness there. And when I say a few years later, I mean like my early 20s.
Okay.
But looking back now, as you grow, you will mature. You will see things from different perspectives. And like, don't get me wrong, I was never mad at her. I was just like, at the time, it was like just a bit of a shock. And then in my early 20s, I was just a bit like, damn, I'm not blaming your mum, but I really think you should have prepared, like, told me a bit sooner. I get you were trying to protect me, but you, like, it would have been better if I knew. And the more I think about it as I've gotten older, it wouldn't have changed anything otherwise, other than probably just distracting me more from the things I was trying to concentrate on. Especially because at this age, I would like, oh, by the time, like I told you, I saw Phantom at 11. From that age, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like I was going to drama club, I was going to trying to get singing lessons, I was playing the piano at one point. All things that were like offered through school and things like that we didn't have to pay for, like that I applied for grants and stuff so I could do this, that, and the other. And I was fully convinced that that was going to be my life. And like all of my spare time, other than playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which I'm sure we'll get to, because that was another thing that consumed a lot of my teen years.
Same.
But spare time, other than that, I was like filling it with either doing external shows like amateur shows outside of school or with school, or doing my, like I was really dedicated from a young age of what I was going to do. And to be honest, all it would have really done is like distract me from those things. So like everything my mum has ever done for me, I'm very thankful. And again, as you mature, you see things from different perspectives. So yeah, like I think that kind of is in a nutshell just kind of tells you the sort of woman she was and like how much she did for me. And not just that, like from the moment to take it a little further, one of like I said, she was really struggling with paying bills after my granddad died, but she was still paying for my drama club. She was still paying not like things that I was dedicated to do with trying to follow my dreams. She still made the money appear for that. And I know how much like my mum made a lot of sacrifices over the years to help me to follow those dreams, right? So she's my best friend, and she will be. She looked after me even when I was like in my early and mid 20s, to be honest, and still like wasn't mature, made some bad decisions, and she always held me accountable for them. She didn't baby me, but she held me accountable, and like she was always there for me. So I've got a very strong relationship with my mum. She's my best mate, and yeah, couldn't be more thankful for her.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got my own kind of strange, like kind of family history, but I will say that like it's very clear that your mom loved and continues to love you really well, and yeah, she sounds like an exemplary woman. So yeah, thanks for kind of sharing a little bit about her. And so
no problem.
Let's say looking back, spending a little bit more time in your youth. What would you say was kind of like a really formative moment for you? If we've already touched on it, you can maybe expand, but kind of like, that really kind of shaped me as I started to evolve into my younger adult self, or I guess however you want to answer that. And then I got a couple other things and we can jump to the next spot.
It's a few things that immediately flash to mind, like the one I just brought up about the day we were evicted. Like that's a memory that like will never leave me. And you mentioned about kind of becoming the man of the house. That was kind of that moment, because again, before then, I didn't realize there was things were that bad, and I was just so concentrated on my dreams and what I wanted to do, and trying to make the most of my teen years to train and put myself in a good position for success. But after the eviction, like that was definitely a sign of like, I don't like putting it, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but I don't like putting it as like becoming a man, because I have opinions on kind of some of the stereotypical things that people consider becoming a man, which I don't think there's necessarily a need to get into, but it definitely I would prefer to put put me from kid to an adult
Yeah.
rather than like becoming a man.
Being launched out
Like
of
I think there comes a
childhood,
point.
out of youth
Yeah,
into adulthood.
I think that point where you like realize you become a bit more aware of the world, right, and the realities of the world. And when it comes to things like taxes and bills and like court systems and stuff that you don't worry about as a kid, do you know what I mean? So there was definitely a coming of age moment there.
Okay.
I think like I said, I did Bugsy Malone when I was in primary school, and that was my first time actually being on stage in a play. And wasn't even I was like I had like two lines, but I loved it. Like again, the feeling of being on the stage again, it was like yeah, I'm addicted to this. Seeing Phantom was definitely as I already mentioned, a very significant moment. I think another one that I would probably bring up is I was 16, exactly 16. And there's a musical, a very well-known one called Les Miserables, very famous musical. It's one of my favorites. And I had done Les Mis when I was 15. I was in my final year of secondary school, high school.
Okay. Was this in school or like
Um,
outside of school?
it was in school, but final year.
Okay.
Um, and we put on a school's edition version of Les Mis, and that was my first time discovering the show, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So much so that then the summer that followed, um, graduating, shall we say,
Yeah.
I found a company that was about 2 hours away that was also putting on a young person's edition of Les Miserables. It wasn't a school; it was just a young person's edition. But it was about a 2 hour journey and would involve me getting up at like 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning every Saturday for the next like 4 months,
Commitment.
getting a 2 hour train to go to this place to join the show. But I love the show so much, and like again, I wanted to spend all my spare time doing those sort of things anyway. So I went along, auditioned for the part that I wanted, the part that I'd also played in the school production I did, got the part. And it was again because it wasn't a school's edition and it was like a third company. They had a bit of a higher budget, so when they were doing the pre-talk about how it was going to look and all their ideas for scenery and set and band and stuff, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be like the biggest show I've ever done. It's going to be amazing. So I got this part. Started commuting to Southampton for you people in the UK, which was like a 2.5 hour train journey. I had to be there for like 9 o'clock in the morning, so I was up at the crack of dawn, but committed to it, did it, and then 2 weeks before the show, the company hired someone to come in and run a masterclass with us, and that someone was someone that was in the original Broadway production of Les Miserables when it first opened. Like
Wow.
can't even remember what year, but I think it was in the 80s. And he'd also been in a lot of TV shows. People in the UK, if you're my sort of age or older, you may remember a show called Birds of a Feather, which was quite famous at the time. He was in that as one of the main characters. He was quite a successful, famous guy for various bits of TV, but more theatre. You were more likely to have heard of him if you were a theatre nerd. Anyway, he came along and ran this masterclass, and it was like my mind was blown. Like I was learning from like the biggest of pros that I'd ever learned from in my
Yeah.
life, and it was very intimidating to be honest. So did this masterclass, loved it, learned so much. Did the show, loved it. About 6 months later, I get an email from his name was Peter,
Okay.
and I get an email from him, but in regards to a company that he
Okay.
owned. Sorry. And the long and short of it was he was putting on his own production of Les Miserables. And he had spent the last year traveling the country and working with different schools or companies that were doing the show
Okay.
and basically handpicking all his favorite people from all of these companies and schools, people that he liked,
No
and then
way.
inviting those people to come along to like a private audition. Like this wasn't just that anyone could turn up, you had to be invited. And he invited me to go and audition for the part that I'd played the last two times before, and that was mind blowing.
That's
That
awesome.
just that alone was mind blowing. Went to the audition. Not only did I get in the show, I got the part again, which is like the second lead. If you know Les Miserables, the character is Javert.
Yep.
If anyone's watching that knows Les Mis, which is a big role. It's like the second lead.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I got that part, and that to me was like, I can do this.
Because
I'm gonna because again before then, like again, I was such a nervous kid. And even to this day, I'm still very shy and can be very anxious. But I have always had the confidence to stand on a stage and play a character because it's not me, right? I was always able to disassociate that. In the past, I never would have stood up as myself and talked to a large group. Wow. But if you say, "Oh, you are playing King and King Lion, and you're making a speech to the crowd," no problem. I will do that happily and play the character. But that was so there was a lot of nerves. There wasn't a lot of self-belief. I was still kind of like nervous giggling my way through everything I'd done. But in that moment, getting that part and then doing that show, I was like, I think I'm good at this. I think I might actually be good at this. But I'm going to end this story by saying that also comes with a very humbling moment, because in performing, it's a very female-dominated industry.
Sure.
I don't know the exact percentages, but the way they always put it to us in college is for out of every 20 people doing singing, dancing, acting, performing, 19 of them will be women. Only 1 of 20 will be a man.
Wow. Okay.
And as such, as a man, yeah, extremely. It's one of the most weighted professions in the world. So as such, men are very much, or boys, even when you're a young age, are harder to come by. So they get much more opportunities to play big parts with less competition. Whereas, like, you know, I might have 5 guys that I'm competing with for a role. A girl's probably going to have 100 plus in that room that are competing for the same role.
Just a savage coliseum.
So it is very... Yeah, so it is very weighted. So you can, as a young performer, get that idea in your head as a man or a boy at the time of, like, not realizing that and just seeing, oh, I keep getting main parts, I must be really, really good. But then you go to college, where the same is true. It's very female dominated. Like, when I went to college, it was a 30-person class, 5 of us were men.
Okay.
So 25 girls, 5 men. But then you still start to realize it's humbling. You realize you're not quite as good as you thought you were. You might still be good, and it's important to be self-aware in that instance. Like, I don't believe it's healthy to just put yourself down constantly and say, I'm awful, I'll never be as good as them, I'm terrible, I'm the worst person here. I don't think that's healthy either. But a realistic understanding of your strengths and weaknesses, I think, is a very defining thing that you can master in life. And they drill that into you when you start, especially when you study acting, singing, and musical theatre is what was the actual course title. They like really try and drill it into you to, like, be honest about what you're good and bad at, and know your weaknesses, know where you need to improve, and know, like, because again, you get only X amount of years of college, right? Is there much point focusing on the stuff that you already do really well? A little bit, because you can still improve in those things, but the idea is to make you an all-rounder so that you are very castable for all sorts of characters, all sorts of shows. So yeah, I went along to college, honestly, with 18, with a bit of an ego on my shoulder. Okay. And it was very quickly knocked off. Don't get me wrong. My late teens and my early 20s, I am not hugely proud of the person I became. I do think the more I evaluate that through therapy and things like that, is that it wasn't malicious. Like, I grew up being very heavily bullied, especially when I started getting into musical theatre. And suddenly I was this, again, you could, like, 20 years ago, it was very normalized to use certain slurs and stereotypes to do with, like, oh, you're doing a dance class. You can use your imagination, the sort of things you get called, and, like, you know what I mean? And not to mention, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh from a young age. Again, we'll circle back to that, but that was again, that comes up because it was very defining for my life. Oh. And again, Yu-Gi-Oh card games when I was a kid 20 years ago was still, like, very popular, but not socially acceptable to bring your Pokemon, your Yu-Gi-Oh cards to school. Pokemon was fine when that first came out. That was the craze in the playgrounds. But I was like 8 when that came out. Okay. But through my, like, secondary school, high school years, if I would bring my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, because there was a boy, like one other boy in the year that also played, and we liked to battle in the dining room at lunch, we would get ripped the hell out of. Like, it was not a fun experience, secondary school. I didn't have a good time. And I think I kind of made a decision when I knew I was going to college and I would be around primarily new people, I was very much like, I'm going to reinvent myself. None of these people know my history. They don't know the loser that I've always been made to look and felt like and all this stuff. I have an opportunity here to come in and like, no, you're not going to treat me like that. Which is a perfectly reasonable perspective to have.
Yeah.
But at that age, the way I channeled that was walking in thinking I was better than, not actually thinking it, but like acting like I was so much above everybody else and kind of turning into the bully where you kind of put someone down to, you know, make yourself look good in front of a crowd. Again, I'm not proud of any of these things. Like I like to think I've matured and grown a lot over time, but late teens, early 20s, like my college years, I think I put up a wall to try and defend myself, and that resulted in me not always being the nicest person. And I've done a lot of reflection on that over the years. So yeah, I would definitely call that a defining moment in my life, like moving to college, just because I made the conscious decision that I wasn't going to be the one that was pushed anymore. And if that meant that I had to push to stop it, if I had to push first, then I did that. And again, not necessarily proud of it, but it's shaped me into who I am.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. So, you know, we'll brush on the Yu-Gi-Oh bit because I think if we were in the same high school together, I truly actually think we would have gotten along very well. The more I learn about you, man, Yu-Gi-Oh actually was ended up being such a big part of my youth as well. It's funny how that worked because when I was in grade school, elementary, you know, for all those Americans out there, but so much like interesting cultural exchange here. All I know about you know, England and such is what we learned from our textbooks, and then I don't know, like Netflix shows, which is probably not the greatest. Actually, I get Harry Potter too, I suppose, but you know, when I was in school, in elementary school, there was like that, like very early stages of Yu-Gi-Oh! The show was coming out. It was like Blue Eyes or Dark Magician, right? And then there was like very early stages of competitiveness, and then lost it for a while. And then like in high school, there was like this really strange resurgence where I ran into an old friend. And like, hey, I see you have Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards back there. Let's go to the local shop. Let's try it out again. And then like me and my little friend group kind of revived it at this local shop. And it like became this huge thing, at least in like the drama nerds. And I remember there was such funny memories of like, we would just be every morning before classes, we'd be like sprawled out on the floor, just everyone playing games. We'd be in the back of classes with textbooks on our laps, playing games from across the room during every lunch period. And one of my favorite memories, because like, I think it was like herd mentality, like a cast of you know, water buffalo in the safari. You know, it was like we had so many nerds gathered that like it was like hard to bully. And so one of my favorite memories was we had like a whole lunch table, it was like 20 of us all playing games with our chicken nuggets and horrible mashed potatoes. And I always carried my deck wherever I went because I had this like fantasy in my head. I'm like, well, you never know. It's like in the show. You never know when you're going to get dueled, right? And so that was like the meme about me with my cargo shorts and sandals on. And this like massive like black gentleman comes up behind me with his crew, and he like taps on my shoulder. He's like, hey, are you that Yu-Gi-Oh nerd? And I was like, oh no, here's the day, dude. Here's the day. And I turn around and I'm like, I guess so. And I kid you not, Baker, he takes out a deck from his jacket and he's like, duel me. And I'm like, what? So yeah, tell me a little bit more about kind of like your Yu-Gi-Oh history and you know, what kind of what was your like, this was my deck that like, you know, my defining deck that I loved. I was like a big zombie synchro guy. And so and then we'll rush on one more topic and then we'll move to your content creation.
Sure. Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me, that story at all, because again, that was another moment because I discovered Yu-Gi-Oh the day the first episode aired in the UK, and immediately just like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever! I need to make this my entire personality. Excuse me. And literally the same, because this was Saturday morning TV, yep. Yu-Gi-Oh peak. Literally the same day. About 6 o'clock, late afternoon, early evening. I had two friends that grew well. The house that I was growing up in, the one we were evicted from, I had two mates that lived. One was next door and one was just down the road, and they were like my first friends. And I don't like again. We this is after Pokemon, obviously. So we'd played, not played, but more traded Pokemon cards and hung out. And we used to play Pokeball Pokemon, which was a game where we'd take it in turns deciding who was going to be the trainer, and the others would be the Pokemon. We'd choose a Pokemon and we'd go and hide somewhere down the back alley, and the trainer had to come and catch us. So those are the sort of childhood games we were playing. Peak childhood. We played outside, man. Anyway, one of these two friends, literally the same day Yu-Gi-Oh aired, about 6 o'clock, came round and he's holding the two starter decks.
Were you a Yugi guy or Kaiba guy? Which one did you get?
So the first one I got was actually Yugi. Okay. I would say same. I am a Dark Magician guy, but I'm a Kaiba guy.
Sure.
If you're gonna make me pick between Kaiba and Yugi, I'm gonna pick Kaiba.
You have Kaiba's flair. I mean, let's be real here.
Kaiba's
let's
more
be real here.
Yeah.
1 second. You can keep talking.
No, you're all good. And yeah, so he literally turns up with both the starter decks. He had watched it too that same morning, and then his parents had taken him out shopping for the day, and they'd gone in a shop where they saw they were all ready for sale, and he'd like begged his parents for them, and he'd got them, and he came straight round my house, and he was like, "There's this new show," and I was like, "I saw it too," and I was like, "What? The cards exist? They actually exist, Mom!"
We're fighting for souls here, the Shadow Realm.
I like blew my mind. So we started playing, obviously by the incorrect rules, as everyone did. Yugi did this; I could do it too.
Yeah, just play Blue Eyes.
We had no idea how to play, but we played. And then it didn't take too long for like this was a big treat without it being a birthday or a Christmas, but like. I begged my mum, and I was like, I was non-stop Yu-Gi-Oh talking about it, and me and my friend Joe, in the garden or in her house at the dining room table, she could see like I had taken this on as a humongous interest. So I think we went out again. It was a time with my granddad. I think he's probably the one that actually paid for them, to be honest. But she ended up getting me one of each starter deck, and yeah, that started my obsession. And we for about 2 years, it was just occasionally taking them to school. Again, that kind of stopped after people kind of started bullying me for it, but occasionally. But more so just playing with the two friends that I just referenced down the street. And then we discovered, or Joe had discovered, that place called Reading that I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest cities closest to me, actually put on tournaments. And they'd been doing this for about a year and a half at this point already, but we had no idea.
Yeah.
But Joe comes around and is like, "Oh my God, Reading, XYZ, they're holding an actual Yu-Gi-Oh tournament there." And we were like...
Time to show our stuff,
we've got to go. So we begged. He didn't have as hard a time begging his parent. His parents were a little more well off together. He had a brother. It was quite regular for them to do trips to Reading shopping anyway. So it was just another weekend for them. And I begged my mum to let me go with them. Which she'd never let me do something like that before. I'm about 13 at this point. She'd never let me do something like that before, like go to another city on my own, without either herself or my granddad or someone she knew very, 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 very well, like a school parent or whatever, or a teacher. But she relented and let me go. So we went on along to this tournament, ended up arriving late, so not being able to play in the tournament, but we see all these tables and chairs laid out, and there's 40 people between the age of 10 and 30 all playing. And but the thing is, I'm looking up and down these tables and I'm like, wow, there's 10% the sort of people I would expect to have seen. And then it's amazing when you play a card game, how many different cultures and peoples and everything that they attract, right? You just told that story about you sat there with your nerd friends, and then this black guy comes up behind you. He's like, "Are you the nerdy Yu-Gi-Oh guy? Let's have a duel." Do you know what I mean? It was amazing to see just the amount of different types of people that had accumulated to play this card game. Met some people, learned the actual rules of the game. We were kind of 80% there at this point, but there were some things that we didn't get. But sorted that out, and then was just like, oh my god, I'm absolutely in love with this. They did this once a month. The following month, again, begged to be able to go. Got there on time this time, and there were age divisions at this event. They did like up to, I think it was 15 and then 15 plus.
Oh, that's nice.
So we go along, me and my mate, we both enter this tournament. We're there on time this time, and I win.
Shut up.
I win. I just straight out win.
My man came in with fire. Okay.
And again, for the old school Yu-Gi-Oh fans, this is like old school, like 7 Colored Fish, Lejeune, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute. Like, this is first 3 sets, 3 or 4 sets.
It's vanilla cards. You're trying to get big bodies out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like scapegoats and things like that. But not everyone's playing a meta deck. Like, it's just an accumulation of whatever people could get together. Because back at that time, big tournaments hadn't really started, and for even the ones that kind of had, there wasn't a YouTube channel that was doing a deck list breakdown.
Exactly, yeah.
There wasn't live casts for the big tournaments. Like Yu-Gi-Oh, during my era playing Yu-Gi-Oh, you got your Yu-Gi-Oh information from a site called metagame.com, which was literally at big events you would have a writer that would sit down at the feature match table and with a laptop and just write everything that's going on. And that was the way a feature match was quote unquote streamed. And that article would come out like later that day or the following day or whatever. So it was very hard to get information about what was considered a meta deck, right? But anyway, go along to this first tournament, win the whole thing, and they had this system, right, where the winner of the senior and juniors division then play a match. You're already considered the winner of your tournament and you get first place prizing, but then they do the junior versus the senior and the winner gets an extra box. So it's just an extra on top of everything else, right? So I get paired up against a guy called Paul, who I have no idea at the time, but come to learn he's like the senior, like he's won nearly every event for the last year. Nearly every single one. He is their king. He is their goat, right? We play. I win game 1. I definitely wasn't playing as well. No. I do want to be clear here. It's not because I was playing better. I was just good enough that the fact that I got luckier in draws just let me just overwhelm. I think he kind of bricked game 1.
Sure.
And I'm not saying my deck was like a top tier meta deck, but it was all 1800 beat sticks and the best traps and the best spells. It was as bad as good as it could be.
Yeah.
So I win game 1. There's a huge crowd. I say huge. It was probably like 15 people. I mean, but it felt huge.
That's pretty sick.
And considering a lot, and most of them are older, right? All the juniors have gone home because they lost. I won the juniors one, and like their parents have taken them home or they've left. So it's mostly only the seniors left. So I am super intimidated and like really bricking myself. So anyway, we play game 1. I win. We play game 2. He wins. Game 3. I can't remember the exact details of the exact board state and the exact hand, but we told this because Paul went on to become a very good friend and we were on the same team for Yu-Gi-Oh! That's where the story is going. And we told this story many times over the years about the first time we met. I should have beaten him when I was the junior and he was the senior. Because I win game 1, lose game 2, game 3. I had a card out called Imperial Order, which for old school fans stops you playing any spells. The Lorcana equivalent would be you cannot play songs while this card is on the field, something like that. And his hand is all spells, or magic cards as they were called back then. His hand is like Hot, Grace, Duo, MST, just all the magic spells that you would play. Nothing else. And I've got this Imperial Order out, and it has just locked him out the game for like 3 turns in a row.
Okay.
And every turn, when it comes to my standby phase, and I have to choose if I'm going to pay the life points to keep it or not, he's saying, "Are you paying for Imperial Order?" And every turn I'm going, because I've got spells I want to play.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware time of just how much I am breaking him out of the game just by keeping this live. I kept it up for 3 turns, got him down to like 2,000 life points.
Okay.
And then I drew like I think I drew a Delink. I think I had Pot Grace Duo in my hand, and I was like,
The
now's the
temptation.
time to like get rid of this and just play my spells, right? So he says, "Are you paying for Imperial Order?" I say no. The entire crowd immediately starts laughing at me
Oh, no.
because they all know. Because
Yeah,
they all
yeah.
know. Like they're going backwards and forwards. They know what's in his hand. They know what's in my hand. It's like they're dead silent because in their perspective, they're watching and thinking, "This bloody kid is going to beat our guy, and he
Yeah.
doesn't even deserve it. He hasn't played better." And I hadn't. Like full transparency, I hadn't been the better player. I'd got luckier. And I was good enough. So they're all in silence, like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is going to happen. Like, this is embarrassing for all of us." Anyway, I say, "No, I'm not going to pay for Imperial Order." They all laugh. But I carry on. I play my Pot Grace Duo. I play my hand. And then he immediately just goes, "Raigeki, this, Harpy's Feather Duster, this.
Reset.
He beats me in 3 turns.
Oh, man.
But as a result of that, afterwards, he pulls me aside and he says, "I'm really sorry for the way they all laughed at you there. And I want to explain why they did. I'm not saying it's okay that they laughed at you. It's not, and I'm going to talk to them. But I want to explain what you did wrong there, because you should have beat me." And he kind of took me on and was like, "I see potential in this kid." And at the time, I was very nervous and humble and like happy to like, "Yes, sir, no, sir." And he took me on. And he invited me to join what became a team. At the start, it was just a group of friends, but it became a team. And he was basically funding my Yu-Gi-Oh habit because it's not something my mum would have been able to afford to have done.
Wow.
I barely even got packs, right? This tournament I've gone to is 2 years of a few packs here, a few packs there for your birthday, maybe a present from whatever. And again, back then in a start, you could get multiple starter decks and get multiple 7-colored fish or multiple Lejin. You could make a meta deck with fairly cheap, not always, but fairly. Anyway, the point being, he basically funded my Yu-Gi-Oh habit. It wasn't just me. He kind of was subletting a few people. This was a man that had a full-time job and his only interest was playing card games.
Wow.
So he funneled all of his adult money into playing card games, and he had like 10 play sets of everything. I would always get the lowest rarities.
Sure.
I would always get play sets of whatever I wanted to play, whatever I wanted. He paid for my train fares because he was a grinder. He was going to tournaments every weekend.
Okay.
And because of him, I became that grinder, and I was going to, unless it conflicted with like a performing thing. Like I said, I was still balancing that. That was the other significant part of my life. But mostly for the next until I moved when I was 17, about to turn 18 to go to college.
Okay.
That was when I stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh with cards. So I'd say like 2 years, like just in with friends, and then go to this tournament, and then spent 5 years like hard grinding, going to every regional, every Nats. The first time I ever went to America was because of Yu-Gi-Oh. I went to SJC California when I was 16. He paid for that. So a lot to be grateful for my old friend Paul, who helped to, allow that to happen, right? So that's where the love of card games came from. And again, more to your point, an understanding of like, wow, like you get people of all sorts that do this. Like I met a UFC cage fighter playing.
Let's go.
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean,
and people from all walks of life. It was crazy in a very positive way. And in fact, it gave me a place that I felt I belonged. Like I kind of had that when I went to drama club and stuff, because again, they're also interested in singing and dancing and acting. So even though I was a bit weird, they didn't judge me for that because they were weird too. And then playing Yu-Gi-Oh again, I'd always been bullied for it at school. But then you go on the weekend, and I'm like, "Oh, you guys are so much cooler than the people I go to school with. Can you come to my school?" And like, you know what I mean? So yeah, defining years and a defining interest.
It's like these arenas of commitment and passion. I think that's what people see. Game respects game, and so I think that's 100%. And I think that's a great springboard to dive into kind of like your early content creation. So kind of let's talk a little bit about Lorcana Villain. Let's talk a little bit about getting into Lorcana and kind of making that decision of like, well, how do I merge these loves? And, tell us about starting Lorcana Villain and what that felt like from the beginning, and kind of the moment when you're like, I'm actually kind of a legitimate content creator now in this space. So yeah,
that would assume that I think that now.
I mean, fair enough. I think many would argue that's so. That's fair. But that's fair.
No, I appreciate it. So like, I can jump straight to that bit, but to be honest, Lorcana Villain was not my first YouTube channel.
Ooh,
So it wasn't
we
my
got some
first,
lore dropping here. Okay.
It wasn't the start of my content creation journey. I won't tell this part of the story in too much detail, but long story short, after going to college and uni, I graduated at 21, and then I spent the next 9 years non-stop chasing the dream of being a performer.
Okay.
And did that in all sorts of ways. I lived all over the country, a couple of jobs abroad. I worked in Cyprus for 2 years, well, 9 months, came home for 3 months, and then another 9 months. So across a 2-year period, I worked in Cyprus a lot, worked all over the UK. And this is everything from theatre to like holiday parks where they would have a show team, to entertainment teams, to like anything to do with performing that I could be paid for, I would do, because it is very drilled into you when you study to be a performer that, hey, like, this isn't a safe career path. Like, not many people make it big enough to live on it, right? So again, they support you, but it's a very hard industry to succeed in. But I spent the next 9 years prepared to make sacrifices, making like the bare minimum money a lot of the time, and still often quite struggling to get by, but getting by and being like, no, I'm prepared to make these sacrifices in what are probably like your 20s. A lot of people will quite correctly say, go and have experiences and do all these things. And that's a great mentality. But for me, I was less interested in that and more interested in like, no, I'm going to dedicate my 20s to learning my craft and perfecting my craft, so that hopefully by the time I get to my 30s, I can enjoy the labor of those fruits. So for me, the experiences weren't going on holidays and going on all this, that, and the things that a lot of people would consider stereotypically like living. And they are. I'm not taking anything away from that, but that didn't appeal to me. For me, living was perfecting my craft, doing working with as many kind of different people as possible, directors, and like just expanding my knowledge and my experience in the industry. And I dedicated myself to that for 9 years. Basically ended up moving home full-time to become a full-time carer for my mum. My mum had got progressively sicker over the years, a range of different things that I'm not going to go into. But basically, when COVID hit and everyone moved home, especially performers, because that was one element of life that absolutely didn't continue. So I moved home, and it was the longest I'd been home in 9 years. Because I'd been home in that time, but it might be for like a weekend or maybe a couple of weeks, and then I'd be moving off to the next gig, what I was doing. But yeah, moved home for COVID, and over the course of being home for that period of time, realised that she was really struggling and she needed help. And the only options there were she goes into care, or I do it. And there was no chance in hell I was putting her into care. She wouldn't want that, and I wouldn't want that for her. So I made the decision to move home, basically put the brakes on my career and focus on looking after her. Which I don't regret, and would make that same choice again 100 times over. But performing, again, I throughout my entire life, I've suffered from mental health issues with depression and anxiety, but performing had been something that had always been a tool to help with that, to distract me, and put me in a better place mentally. Yeah. So then when you put me back home and you take that away completely, and I'm left just with my own thoughts, not only that, I'm 30 now. I think I turned 30 in COVID. So I turned 30 and I'm like, I have no I have no finances behind me. Like the last 9 years, I am very proud of things that I've done, and I've learned a lot, and I've had some really cool adventures and experiences. But I've not done anything to give myself any sort of lifelong security. I have nothing in the bank in terms of savings. And now my career has come to a standstill to look after mum, which again I don't mind, but I was really like getting to this point, like basically having a midlife crisis and just thinking like, what is the future going to hold for me? Is it time to give up these dreams of chasing to be a performer and try and get something that's a bit more reliable? Which in the back of my head had always been that I would be a teacher and I would teach musical theatre, because then at least it's something that's a more reliable way to like a career, but still being able to relate to my interests, because I couldn't imagine working a 9 to 5 job that I wasn't passionate about in some way. And I've done teaching in the past and directing, and I love working with new talent. So I was like prepared for that to be something that happened later on in life if things didn't work out the way I wanted. But it was still a bitter pill to swallow, right? Especially because I still believed that I had something that I could contribute. And again, this is, like I said earlier, it's drilled into you to be realistic about what you're good and you're bad at. And I wasn't going like, and as I matured and I got the chip off my shoulder and I got the ego off my shoulder and I just started to, be the best person I could be, I was still well aware of like, I'm never going to do these things. I'm not good enough at this point in my life, but I still feel like I could do these things and I could contribute in this way. So it's hard to let go. Anyway, I knew that I needed a creative outlet. I needed something to do day by day, because I was just, again, I was more than happy to be looking after my mum, but in myself I was depressed as heck. I was miserable and having this breakdown. So I needed something to ignite a fire and some passion in me. And I decided to create a YouTube channel as my way of doing this. And the intent behind that was never, I'm going to try and make it being a content creator or a YouTuber. That was genuinely never the intent going into it. It was purely hey, I need something to fill my time. I need a creative outlet. I've enjoyed, I've always been a big Pokemon fan. And a lot of my YouTube consumption had been Pokemon, mostly in the form of people that made content for the Game Boy or DS or Switch games.
Sure.
One of my favorite early creators was someone called Shady Penguin, who would do playthroughs of old school Pokemon games, but with custom rules. It's called a Nuzlocke.
Yeah,
And a lot of content, a lot of content creators for Pokemon do it. And I was I'd always been a big fan of watching them. And I'd always thought in the back of my head, I'd love to do something like that. But at this point in my life, I was traveling. I was still in that 9-year block of working on my craft. Didn't have time for stuff like that. I was genuinely very busy all the time. But in the back of my head, I'd always been like, I think I'd be pretty good at that. I'd enjoy that. So then I moved home. I'm having this crisis. I need an activity. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a YouTube channel. I'm going to work out how they do it, how to use like ROMs and emulators and how to use Streamlabs and all that stuff. I watched a bunch of tutorial videos on YouTube, and I worked it out. And I had a iMac at the time. That I had like a £5 camera, and like a £5 mic. But I did it. I learned how to, in its basic form, make a Pokemon run through with your camera in the corner and the gameplay. And I even learned to edit. I made like overlays and banners and like graphics for my channel. And yeah, I created a YouTube channel called Baker Bulbasaur. And the primary theme of that was,
I love it.
Baker Bulbasaur, number one. And the primary thing for that was I was going to make Nuzlocke content on YouTube, which was primarily what I did. But I also made other content on that channel, which was I learned a lot from Baker Bulbasaur. I learned how to edit. I learned how to use Photoshop. I learned how to be myself in front of the camera and not just like, as I mentioned earlier, I've always been confident to talk in front of people, but it's not me. It's always been a character. Even when I'd done stuff like, an evening of singing with Baker, and it's kind of just meant to be you chatting with the crowd and singing some songs. Even then, I had a character that I would a mask that I would put up that I would use as the lens, shall we say. But learning to just be in front of a camera as yourself and just talk about your geeky hobbies was still very new to me. So I learned that, learned things about YouTube and the algorithm and how to use keywords and create thumbnails. And basically, I I think that Baker Bulbasaur was exactly the preparation and training that I needed. I spent about 2.5 years making content for that channel, and it prepared me for Lorcana Villain.
Okay.
Because when the time came that I decided to make a second channel, I had this 2.5 years of knowledge that I'd gained from creating videos on Baker Bulbasaur, and 95% of those videos not getting more than 50 views,
Yeah.
but persisted and kept on at it. Which, to your credit, bit of a random thing to bring up now, but I feel it makes sense. Is actually one of the main reasons that I was happy to agree to do this with you so quickly. Because I had a look on your channel and I saw you have a long history of making videos going back about a year and a half. And again, not necessarily getting the greatest views, but you've persisted. And that is something that I really want to put a spotlight on. And maybe it's arrogant to say reward, but it is also kind of feels like the most appropriate way of putting it. Like, I know what it's like to do that grind and feel like no one's watching, because that's the thing I want to get across, right? Like Lorcana Villain, I did very well early on and started getting really good numbers and views and comments and stuff like that. But it came after 2.5 years of the exact opposite of that. Constantly making videos, putting far more editing time into it than I've ever put into a Lorcana Villain video.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I make it flat, flash, and fancy and stand out, it's going to do better. And that just weren't the case. Yeah. So I spent 2.5 years making majority of my videos on that channel are under 50 views. There's a couple of exceptions. And then there's a couple that... So, stark contrast, there is one video on that channel that has about... over 100,000 views.
Let's go.
And that's the last video I ever did for that channel before quitting, which was kind of weird.
How interesting.
You make your most successful video of all time, and that's the time to call it quits. But yeah, basically all this to say that was actually my introduction to content creation, was making the Baker Bulbasaur channel and spending about 2.5 years on there, both videos and live streams. Predominantly Pokemon, but also some other things. I made some Yu-Gi-Oh content. I made some reaction content. I did some streams playing other games. Like I played Batman Arkham Asylum. I played Resident Evil 5 with a friend of mine because it's a multiplayer.
Resident Evil. What a cultured man we have here. Resident Evil 2.
A few other things. I think a bit of Zelda I played as well on the channel. I did a little bit of kind of all my interests, but majority of it was Pokemon. But yeah, that prepared me for Lorcana Villain. So when that time came that I decided to make a new... And that's what basically happened, right? Was I started to fall out of love with Pokemon. I will always say I love Pokemon, because I always will. It was such a big part of my childhood. Just obsessed with it. The cards, the show, watching people play the games, like just in love with the IP. And I always will be. Scarlet and Violet took the game in a direction that made me a little bit, I don't really like the way we're going here. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of why,
it was Sword and Shield for me,
Didn't do much for me. Loved Legends Arceus, though. I will say that. I think that's one of the best games ever made. Love that. But yeah, it was kind of just falling out of love with Pokemon. I'd also resound myself to the fact that I knew that I had tanked the channel, Baker Bulbasaur. I had put it into a state where I knew it was never going to achieve its maximum potential. And I know there's a point where you want to get to kind of advice to content creators, so we'll circle back to that. But the point being, I learned lessons about what I did wrong on Baker Bulbasaur, and I was fully aware that Baker Bulbasaur, if I was to just start making Lorcana Villain content for Baker Bulbasaur, it wouldn't, like, on the channel I already had, and had like 2,000 subscribers on, it would not have been a good idea, and those videos would not have grown the way that they did because I made a new channel. So I learned a lot from Baker Bulbasaur that helped me prepare for Lorcana Villain, and doing that, like, basically mid-maxing my Lorcana Villain experience.
Yeah, sure. I think it really shows, like, when I was kind of looking at, who makes the most sense to kind of just have a chat with, right? Going through, ran into, your channel again. And I think it's really funny because your presence as far as a caster and being a part of like any Disney Lorcana Challenge experience or tournament experience that you're a part of. I think it is actually pretty distinct from your YouTube presence. You know, you're still Baker, right? You're still Lorcana Villain, but just like what you talk about, how you present yourself, you know, the clear domain of expertise and your understanding of like the meta and the Lorcana game space. But then, you know, how much more of like when you are on a stream, right? It's so clear that you are wanting to give people the funnest experience, right? But on your YouTube channel, it really feels like you are trying to give people the fullest experience. You know, you're really trying to anticipate questions, anticipate needs, and flesh out not only something you're clearly passionate about, but you know, something that you communicate in a very like clear, concise, and engaging manner. And so I thought that like not disparity, but that juxtaposition between who you are on stream versus who you are on your channel was just so cool and so special. And so that's why I was so excited, like kind of to talk to you about that. So we're coming up on an hour. I do want to respect your time.
Yeah, I've probably got about another 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll I think let's go for like another 10 because I actually have my first set champs in like 20. But let's, you know, there's so much more I wanted to ask you, but maybe we can set up another time some other day. But let's.
Well, but if people want to submit questions, then
Yeah.
maybe it's something. Like, again, I'm busy for the next 3 weeks, but I don't see why we couldn't.
Yeah, and it's
address some of them in the future.
Yeah, nothing hard to commit. But let's kind of close up a little bit on, you know, looking back on so with Baker Bulbasaur now with Lorcana Villain. What was kind of the moment where you're just like, man, you know, I'm really proud of this. And if you had to like communicate to a younger content creator, and then I want to end with like the final point being the moment when you got invited for Worlds. You know, I actually watched your Worlds reflection video. It was very powerful. The audio recording on it was terrible. And the video recording on it was, I don't know what's happening with your camera, but it was like, you know, it was like stuck in a 240p or something. But
no, I think I even started the video by that thing by saying that, like, I know the camera's all out of sync. I can't fix it, but if I don't do this now, then I'm never going to do it. So deal with it.
But I mean, like, you know, I was still captivated by your story. And so, so I guess like that moment was like, wow, you know, I'm really proud of this moment, this thing, where I'm at in that point of time. And then kind of ending with the moment when you got invited to Worlds and what that meant. And clearly I think I'm going to speak for the people, but I think whenever people look back on Worlds, you know, most of my friends and the people when we watched it live was like, bro, praise God Baker was there. I was like, thank goodness, you know, everyone did a stand-up job. But, you know, I think there's always like, we're just very thankful that you really brought 150 million% to the show and the presence. And so what you did and you delivered. And so I just want to, you know, really affirm that.
Thank you.
But and then kind of like, you know, so maybe reflecting on that moment a little bit and kind of what that experience was like. And then kind of we'll close with what would you say to people that want to grow in this space, that are passionate about kind of, you know, making an impression and you know, doing content and such. And then I guess we'll just, you know, after that, you know, closing comments.
Yeah. So what was did you start with, like, what was a moment where I
I feel like
I've done something good here.
I've done something good here with my content.
Yeah, so there's a couple that jump to mind. Not necessarily in the right order.
Sure.
I'd have to think about it properly, but just to spitball them. My first card reveal, I cried. Basically, I think at this point I was maybe 300 subs. So it was still super early days. But I had clipped one of my videos that I'd uploaded to YouTube. I can remember what it was. It was reviewing new cards. No, it wasn't. Hold on. Let's get this right.
Oh,
I was You may want to cut this dead space.
I'm a big believer in pregnant pauses, so sometimes we just let
Okay, so I can't remember what led to it, but the main point being, I had cut one of my videos where I was singing World's Greatest Criminal Mind.
Okay.
As I do in a lot of my videos, especially early on, where I was singing a lot to kind of get it over.
Sure.
So I clipped one of me singing World's Greatest Criminal Mind, and I put it on Twitter, which I didn't do a lot back then. And even now, really, the occasional thing. But yeah, I clipped this one bit and I put it on Twitter. And the official Disney Lorcana Twitter account replied to that post with a video saying, "We love the singing, please never stop." Oh. And at this point, the Lorcana Twitter account was not doing the kind of more social posts that we see a little bit more of nowadays and kind of some interaction with fans. Yeah. All they'd really done up to this point was the year before the game came out, like making posts teasing the game, little things here and there. And then after the game had come out, it had mostly just been very official posts, like so-and-so comes out on this day, or this is the new Glimmer, what do you think? Like, it was very advertising, the sort of posts you'd expect to see. They hadn't done a lot of just casually chatting with the community. So the fact that I don't think I was the first, but I was definitely one of the first that they kind of communicated with in that way. So I was like, oh my God. And then they followed me. And I was like, let's go. And at this point, like, they followed like 60 people, and most of them were like IGN and the official Disney Twitter and all these big companies, right?
Right.
Not a lot of content creators were they following. A few, like Illumateers and Jonty from the Inkwell, if you're old school, you'll remember him. And the Lorcana twins, the girls. But not a lot. Not a lot of the content creators were they following, but they followed me. And that, to me, was just mind-blowing. And then literally a day later, I got a DM from them saying, basically, would you like to do a card reveal? And I cried. I literally cried.
So
and I went and got my mum and brought her in to show her. And we had a bit of a moment. Like, again, she didn't understand, but she could see through my reaction how big a deal it was, at least to me.
Yeah.
So that was lovely. So that was definitely a defining moment of like, wow, they would trust me to do something like this. That's huge. Especially, this was set 2, by the way, so it was super early on. So that felt like a huge thing. And then I know one of the questions you said you might ask about was how I got my first casting gig, and this, I don't think we've got time to tell the whole story, but this is kind of a piece of it.
Sure, teaser.
So I went to 3 months after the game came out. So this is actually before my card reveal. So I've told the story in the wrong order. But yeah, 3 months after the game came out, only first chapter was available. I went to Comic-Con, which is in the, I know you get it in America and other places as well, but in the UK it's at the XL Centre in London twice a year. I think it's like June and October, sort of like midpoint of the year and endpoint of the year.
Okay.
And I'd been to Comic-Con in the past when I was a teenager for Yu-Gi-Oh! And not so much lately, because again, that 9-year gap where I was very, very busy traveling and working and doing all these things. But I hadn't been to Comic-Con in a long while. And Lorcana were advertised to be there, and that there was going to be a booth, and that's how you could get the Gaston promo. So I was like, well, I'm absolutely going to this. Went on my own. So went to Comic-Con. Found the booth where they were doing Lorcana things. The artist Matthew Robert Davies was there, who did the first Enchanted Elsa and other fantastic cards.
Wow.
Met him, got my Gaston promo, got him to sign it. I also asked him, I said to him, hey, I've got a really small YouTube channel. Would you mind saying subscribe to Lorcana Villain on camera? And he was like, yeah, sure. So I did that, and it was the intros of the next video I did. But then I heard there was another company that were putting on an actual Lorcana tournament that day at Comic-Con. It was Draft. It wasn't officially organised by Ravensburger. It was just it was just an LGS that did all sorts of card games, and they were holding a draft tournament at Comic-Con for, again, the game was in its infancy, and everyone remembers how crazy first chapter and popular it was, right? So they're just getting in the game. So after I've done my stuff at the Ravensburger stand and I've got my promo and I've had my thing signed and blah, 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 I go over to like another corner of the room where this company, can't remember the name, are putting on a draft event. No, I wasn't planning to play because I had to get back to mum within a certain amount of time. I only had like a couple of hours that I could spare. But I found the owner and I was like, hey, I've got a small YouTube channel. Do you mind if I just get some shots of people playing the event? And he was like, if it's okay with them, it's okay with me. So I did that. I went to the tables. The judge did the explaining of how the draft was going to work and started giving out packs. And then when the judge stopped, I very cheekily, just very quickly dived in like, hi, everyone. Sorry, I know you don't know me, but I have a small YouTube channel. Does anyone have a problem if I just film you guys playing?
Put yourself out there.
But yeah, basically. There was one man who said, please, he had like a 5-year-old girl with him. And he was like, not her, but you can film me. And everyone else was like, yeah, that's fine. So obviously I wasn't going to go out of my way to film the 5-year-old girl, but perfectly reasonable to mention, like, I'd rather if you didn't do this, but they were happy with me recording their gameplay, basically. So I start just going up the table as they're opening their draft, just getting some footage. Then behind me comes 2 people that work for Ravensburger that I'd very briefly met over at the stand. Just a very polite, the same conversation they'd had with everyone that day. Hi, welcome. Please scan this to get your Gaston promo. There you go. There's your card. And if you want it signed, Matthew Robert Davies is over there. Have a lovely day. Like, that was it. But 2 of them came over and they had their own camera. And they were planning on getting some of their own footage of this event, in case they wanted to use it in the future for anything. Spoilers, Ravensburger do that a lot. Like, there's a lot of footage out there that has never seen the light of day, and maybe it will in the future, but that's what you should do when you're building a game, right? You want all this stuff for marketing. So they wanted to get some of their own footage. And me, I swear on my grandfather's grave, the intent behind this was not, oh, I'm going to try and get in with Ravensburger. My intent was, I don't want to look like a weirdo.
Yeah.
While they're going up and down the tables getting official footage, I just don't want to be the guy that's like, I don't know, I just felt a bit awkward without just explaining to them, hey, this is what I'm doing. I've asked the owner. I've asked the players. They're all okay with it. That's all it was. I just wanted to not look like a weirdo. So I go over to
goals,
like, one
really.
of them was holding a camera and the other one was just standing there, whose name is Ben. Has gone on to be a very good friend of mine. But they're stood there, and I go up to Ben, and I'm like, hi, my name's Baker, I've got a small YouTube channel, blah, 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 everything I've just said. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, that's fine. You look familiar to me, actually. And I was like, oh. Well, I came over to the booth not long ago to get a Gaston Pro, and he was like, no, I saw you then, but I recognise you from something else. Anyway, within about 30 seconds, he's seen my channel. Now, not, like, subscribed, watching everything I've done, because again, it took him about a minute to work out where he recognized me from. But eventually he was like, oh, I have seen your stuff. Do you do it like with a green screen? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, I've seen your stuff. Yeah, I remember quite enjoying it. Keep it up.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my god, thank you so much. Did some more of my filming, and then as I was getting ready to leave, me just wanting to be thankful, like, thank you players, thank you owner, make my way over to Ben and the woman with the camera. I'm off now, thank you so much, it was really lovely to meet you. And he turns around and goes, oh, there he is. And he goes, can't remember her name, come over here, just wait a minute. So I'm stood there like, done something wrong? Are you about to tell me not to use the footage? Or like, I don't know. Anyway, this lady comes over and he was like, this is the head of PR for the UK branch of Ravensburger. If you give her your email and take her email, and maybe we can look at working together in the future.
Wow. So cool.
So that's what I did. Now that again, we haven't got time for me to tell the whole story because there is a lot more to it, what led to me doing my first casting. But that was 100% a significant moment in that journey. Me getting incredibly lucky. And
being in the right place at the right time.
Right place at the right time. And again, that's kind of the moral I'd like to leave behind this interview, like leave the audience with, is that Lorcana Villain, I got so incredibly lucky, and I'm not just saying that as a generalized, the way celebrities just say, "Oh, I'm really lucky." Like, I'm not saying, like, there is a specific reason that I'm going to give you why I was lucky, because I was there before anyone else.
Yeah.
Before the game was even out, I decided I was going to stop Baker Bulbasaur, but I wanted to continue making content. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I had enjoyed making videos over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In my head, I was weighing up between doing something related to Yu-Gi-Oh, not playing the card game, but more I was going to talk about the show and maybe take the mick a little bit. Or I was going to do something about wrestling, which is another big passion of mine throughout my life. And then I saw an advert for Lorcana. And I was actually at the party quite late because there were people making content for Lorcana like a year before it came out. I discovered it 1 month before it came out, like 3 weeks. Scrolling social media. And at this point, I'm looking for what I want my new channel to be about. I don't know what I want it to be yet, but that's in the back of my mind. I'm also kind of missing card games. Yeah. I played a bit of Pokemon trading card game online over those last sort of, while I was making Baker Bulbasaur. But I miss the tournament environment and actually being being with the community. So I was kind of also looking for a new card game to play, but I'm very picky. Like, I'm an IP-based TCG guy. Like, my games are Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Lorcana. I will never play One Piece or Digimon because I'm not fans of the show. No shade. They're just not for me. So I'm never going to pick up that game, ever. RuneScape. Is it Riftbound? Sorry, not RuneScape. Riftbound. Like, I enjoyed Arcane. Not enough that I'm going to dead it like most. Jinx is very cool. Other than that, I have no emotional attachment to any of these cards or characters. So I'm very picky. And I'm scrolling and I see this picture with the Lorcana, with the Illuminary and the logo and the Captain Hook card, the Forceful Duelist. And I was like, oh my God. This is it. This is a card game, which it's been a while, but like I have experience both in person, from a casual perspective, from a perspective of like being a try-hard every weekend traveling
grinder,
pro gamer. And I know Disney like the back of my hand. Like, even throughout growing up, Disney had always remained a favorite of mine. Like watching a Disney film or listening to a soundtrack. When you study musical theatre, like, there are some very, very successful West End and Broadway shows like that are Disney films. Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid. I watched Hercules in the West End at the end of October. So Disney had remained a big passionate part of my life, and I was always a Disney geek. I was always the one that knew the obscure fact, not necessarily about like behind the scenes, like the actors and stuff like that, but like I remember the lyrics of the song and the names of the characters, and he's from that and she's from that, and like I just knew Disney very, very well. Yeah. And I was like, this is it. Like, I can combine my two interests. But not only that, again, I said to you, I'd learned so much from Baker Bulbasaur about the things that I think you should do to stand out as a creator. And I was like, I can sing. I can literally be the singing Lorcana YouTuber. Nearly no one else is going to be doing that. Maybe someone will, but it's going to be such a small piece of the pie.
It's not well.
And not only that, like, I knew the branding. Because, again, throughout my year as a performer, I'd always played villains. And quite happily, they're always the more interesting characters. And I look like a villain. And I don't think that as a bad thing. Like, I'm 6'3", slim. I've got a bit of a creepy face. Like, and I don't, again, I'm okay with that. Because the parts I always wanted to play were the creepy, weird, evil, like that. I just found those characters interesting. So I had no issue with that. So I'm like, I'm going to be the Lorcana Villain. I'm going to play into everything that I have learnt about how to express yourself in various ways over the last 15 years of my life, 9 professionally, and then all the training before then. And I'm just going to put it all together. And again, I haven't got time to get into details, but I learnt a lot from Baker Bulbasaur about branding, video length, just all these sort of tricks that you really do pick up just from experience. Yeah. And again, was born from 2.5 years of making non-stop streams and videos that would get 50 views. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I did my time. Like, I was in the and I think it's very healthy to experience that. Like, don't get me wrong, I will if someone starts a channel for the first time and zooms to starhood, good on you, mate. Fair play. But I think it's very character building to know what it's like to be in the trenches, making content that gets 2 likes, and one of them's your mum. And
on 2 different accounts, you know. So...
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the third one's me, but YouTube removed it. It's very humbling, and you learn a lot through that. So, yeah. I don't know if that exactly answers the questions that you asked, but hopefully it's informative.
I think that was great. Well, yeah, I think I think we'll close it here. Baker, any just send-offs, plugs, anything you want to say? And then I just want to say a personal thank you for your time, man. This was a lot of fun. I really felt like I learned a lot about you, and I just had a great time. So.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Thank you for doing it again. It's not something I expect the majority of the Lorcana community is going to be interested in, but I'm sure, like, again, people that are like people that are my members, and like, I never want to. I think it's important to balance being humble with not being naive.
Yeah.
You know, I've said that before, right? Like, again, I know there will be people who, and like, it's been expressed to me, that are interested in like more behind the scenes and more personable stuff. But yeah, it's nice to talk about the roots. So thank you for the invite. And again, fair play to you. You know, I can see you've been on the grind for a long time. So good on you. Keep it up. And yeah, just as a plug, again, YouTube content is about the same as it's always been. I'll continue to cover deck lists and interview members of the community and put spotlights on the community. I've just finished wrapping up the set championship, the content creator set championship episodes, which it's been a tradition now that the UK team organise those for the UK content creators, and I've always filmed my games, and then for the last 4 sets I get guest casters to come on the channel and provide the casting for my games, which is great for me because I get to have people come on and contribute towards my content and be fresh faces to keep the content interesting. And hopefully is also good for them and gives them a spotlight, and people that are my viewers may discover a content creator or a player or a community member, whoever it is, that they weren't aware of, and will now start following and like supporting that person. So there's that. Lorcana D&D is still to come. Which has been a big project that I've been working on since the first chapter. A lot of passion and time has gone into that. Expect that the Q2 this year, I would say. And yeah, to aspiring content creators, again, like, focus on what makes you unique. Anyone can pull up a deck list and talk you through the cards. Show your personality. Like, people will care a lot more if you show them who you are. I think to get by making content of just information, you need to be like Frank Carsten levels of intelligent. Like, I think your takes need to be that unique and like in the 1 percentile for people. And don't get me wrong, that's no shit. I find Frank very entertaining. Like, he knows how to entertain. But I'm just making the point of, like, I think you need to be a Frank Carsten to think that just analytics is enough for YouTube content. The pro players will appreciate that. They're not going to care if you're throwing in jokes and personality. They just want the information. But fun fact, and pro players hate hearing this, and I'm sorry,
they do
not make up. They are such a small percentage of TCG players. They are not going to take up the bulk of the people watching your content. And hey, I'm not saying don't still cater to pro players. You said earlier, and thank you for it, that I try and I try and make stuff for everyone, whether you're a beginner or a pro. And I try and make, if this video I was super basic and I really broke everything down, the next video I'm going to speak to more for the pro players, and the new players I'm going to say, go watch the last video. This one I'm going to kind of talk more from the perspective of someone that's probably been playing the game a year or two, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm not saying don't care about the pro players. You absolutely should. Like, their numbers are significant. But it's not the be all end all. Like, people want to see fun. They want to hear about your interest in Disney. Because fun fact, a lot of people are playing this game because it is Disney characters on them. Yep. So if you have those interests, tap into them. That being said, if you're not a Disney fan but you just love the Lorcana trading card game, Go off, King. Make it that I'm not saying you have to be bursting into song and coming out of 100 Disney quotes. Just find whatever it is that makes you unique and let us see that.
I love it. Well, I'm going to put you on an awkward spot here real fast. I want to see your best thumbnail face, and we'll close with that, and then we'll end the recording here. So we'll do a quick count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Nailed it. All right. Well, thank you, Baker. And for everyone
No
watching,
problem,
give him, all the likes, follows, stuff. And then I'm sure you hear his voice plenty times, but take it easy. Peace.
Bye-bye.